The first laugh comes when Caleb Mercer carries a steel stove pipe toward the cave, with Atlas walking silently beside him. From the road below, 3 pickup trucks idle beside Miller's General Store, their engines coughing blue exhaust into the sharp mountain air. Someone whistles. Another man cups his hands around his mouth. "Hey, Seal, forget your mortgage payment." Laughter climbs the granite slope. Caleb keeps walking. At 39, he still moves with the measured economy drilled into him through years in the Navy SEALs. But there is no uniform now. Only faded work pants, scarred boots, a canvas jacket, and gloves rough with pine resin. Atlas, his aging German Shepherd K9, stays against his left knee. The dog's black and tan coat catches the pale afternoon light, silver beginning to show around his muzzle. His ears twitch at the voices below. Caleb touches 2 fingers to Atlas's shoulder. "Leave it," Atlas does. They continue upward. The cave sits nearly half a mile above Pine Hollow, hidden behind lodgepole pines and a shelf of dark granite. People in town call it a hole. Caleb calls it home. Inside, the air smells of stone, cedar shavings, and yesterday's coffee. Water taps softly somewhere deep in the rock. Caleb sets down the stovepipe beside a compact cast-iron heater and checks the thermometer mounted near his bunk, 46 degrees. Atlas circles once over a wool blanket before lowering himself beside a stack of sealed food containers. Nothing inside the cave is accidental. A hand pump feeds water through a filter. Medical supplies sit inside waterproof cases. Firewood is stacked above the stone floor on pallets. 2 lanterns hang from steel hooks. Emergency blankets, climbing rope, batteries, dog food, and canned meals fill shelves Caleb built from salvaged lumber. Near the entrance, he has bolted a heavy timber frame into the rock and fitted it with an insulated door. Pine Hollow sees poverty. Caleb sees redundancy. That evening, he kneels beside Atlas and runs his palm along the dog's ribs. Not bad for a couple of cavemen. Atlas releases a low breath and rests his chin on Caleb's boot. Outside, headlights crawl along the highway far below. The town glitters warmly. Restaurants, porches, electric signs, houses with furnaces humming behind painted walls. Caleb watches for a moment, then closes the insulated door. The laughter cannot reach them anymore. Over the next several days, he works without explanation. He seals cracks with expanding foam, hangs another wool curtain behind the entrance, cleans the stove flue, and marks food containers by expiration date. Atlas follows every trip, carrying a small working harness with collapsible bowls and first aid supplies tucked into its pockets. On Thursday morning, Caleb drives into town for kerosene. At the register, a young clerk glances at the 4 containers in his cart. Planning for the apocalypse? Caleb places cash on the counter. Planning for winter. The clerk smirks toward 2 customers behind him. Caleb hears it. He takes the change anyway. Back at the cave, the temperature has dropped another 6 degrees. Atlas stops before entering. His nose rises. He stares north toward the white teeth of the mountains, perfectly still. Caleb follows his gaze. High above the ridge, a thin gray band stretches across the horizon. Too straight, too heavy. He kneels and presses his bare palm against the granite beside the entrance. The stone is colder than it should be. Atlas gives one quiet whine. Caleb looks at the supplies stacked behind them, then down toward the unsuspecting lights of Pine Hollow. Without saying a word, he picks up his empty pack and starts back toward town. By noon, someone in Pine Hollow has turned Caleb Mercer into entertainment. The video shows him crossing Main Street with Atlas beside him, for kerosene cans in one hand and a bundle of wool blankets under the other arm. The caption calls him Pine Hollow's Cave Seal. By the time Caleb reaches Miller's General Store again, laughter spills from a phone near the coffee counter, thin and metallic beneath the hiss of the old radiator. Atlas hears it first. His ears angle toward the sound. Caleb feels the dog's shoulder tighten against his knee. Easy. Atlas looks up once, then follows. Caleb fills a cart with batteries, canned soup, oatmeal, medical gauze, hand warmers, 2 boxes of emergency candles, and every remaining package of water purification tablets. Near the register, a broad man in a red work jacket lifts his phone. Smile, Mercer. Folks online want to see how the caveman prepares. Caleb places another bag of dog food into the cart. The paper sack smells faintly of grain and dried meat. You expecting the power grid to surrender? The man asks. A few people laugh. Caleb turns toward him. His voice stays low. How much fuel do you have at home? The laughter thins. Enough. Blankets. I've got a furnace. Caleb glances through the front window. The daylight has flattened into a dull silver, and fine ice crystals skate across the parking lot like sand. Furnaces need power. The man lowers his phone halfway. Caleb pays in cash. The total leaves only a few folded bills in his wallet. He does not hesitate. Outside, the wind has sharpened enough to sting exposed skin. Atlas pauses beside the truck instead of jumping in. His nose works rapidly. Then he turns north again. Caleb opens the passenger door. I know, buddy. Back at the cave, Caleb changes everything. He carries the kerosene to a protected storage recess away from the stove. He divides food into daily portions. He tests every lantern, checks the fire extinguisher, lays climbing rope beside the entrance, and moves Atlas's emergency harness within arm's reach. The cave echoes with the click of buckles and the scrape of metal against stone. By late afternoon, the cast-iron stove radiates steady heat, filling the chamber with the dry scent of cedar smoke. Atlas watches Caleb drag 2 unused wooden pallets toward the rear wall. Caleb lays sleeping pads across them, then adds blankets. For places, then 6. Atlas tilts his head. Caleb pauses. The town had mocked them. Yet he is preparing beds for people who are not there. Habit, he murmurs. But he builds 2 more. At dusk, headlights appear below. A pickup stops near the trailhead, and 3 young men climb out. Their laughter carries through the pines. One points toward the cave, while another raises a phone. Mercer, give us the grand tour. Caleb steps outside. Atlas emerges beside him, silent, posture straight. Snow has not begun, but the temperature has fallen to 19 degrees. The air smells metallic. Caleb looks past the men toward Pine Hollow's glowing windows. Go home, he says. Storm's coming. One of them grins. Forecast says snow tomorrow. Caleb watches the pine tops bend suddenly east. Not this one. The men laugh again and return to their truck. Caleb waits until their taillights disappear. Then he kneels beside Atlas and fastens the K9 emergency harness around the shepherd's chest. The dog stands perfectly still. Caleb tightens the final buckle, looks toward the town, and makes his decision. At first light, he is going down there one last time to warn them. At dawn, Atlas refuses to follow Caleb down the trail until Caleb turns and looks north. The German shepherd stands rigid beneath the pines, emergency harness dark against his coat, nose lifted into air so cold each breath leaves silver mist around his muzzle. There is no birdsong, no squirrel chatter, only branches ticking together above them and a distant, continuous moan rolling over the ridge. Caleb studies the clouds. They no longer drift. They advance. A dense gray wall has swallowed the western peaks, and beneath it hangs a white curtain stretching from mountain to mountain. He checks the small thermometer clipped to his pack. 11 degrees. All right, he says. We make it quick. Atlas immediately falls beside him. 20 minutes later, they reach Main Street, where plows have salted the pavement and breakfast smells of bacon and burnt coffee leak from the diner vents. Christmas lights still hang across storefront windows. Pine Hollow looks ordinary enough to make Caleb's warning sound ridiculous. He enters Miller's General Store with Atlas at heel. Conversations soften. The man in the red jacket from yesterday sits near the coffee station. His name is Wade Harlan, owner of a roofing company and apparently the town's newest comedian. He raises his phone. Caveman's back. Caleb ignores him and walks directly to the counter. You have a weather radio? The clerk points behind him. Sure. Turn it on. A few customers chuckle. The clerk hesitates, then switches on the dusty unit. Static crackles through the warm store. The official forecast still mentions heavy snow by evening, worsening overnight. Caleb shakes his head. That front is moving faster. Wade takes a sip of coffee. And you know better than meteorologists? Caleb looks at him. No. Atlas does. More laughter. Atlas does not react. His attention is fixed on the glass door, ears forward. Caleb steps toward the front window and points at the ridge. See the cloud base dropping? Feel the pressure in your ears? Wind changed twice since sunrise. If you've got electric heat, fill your wood stove. Charge everything. Keep your vehicles off County Route 9 afternoon. Wade smiles. Anything else, Commander Cave? Caleb's jaw moves once. Yeah. Check on anyone who lives alone. That quiets the room for half a second. Then Wade's phone rises again. Caleb turns away. Outside, he and Atlas cross toward the fire station. A sudden gust drives loose salt across the pavement with a dry hiss. Atlas stops in the middle of the crosswalk. His head snaps west. Caleb feels it a moment later, a pressure change deep in his ears. Then the town's flag whips straight out. He enters the station and repeats the warning to the volunteer chief. This time nobody laughs, but nobody moves either. County hasn't issued anything beyond winter storm status, the chief says. Caleb sets a hand on Atlas's harness. Then call them again. Mercer, call them. The first snowflake strikes the station window. Then another. Within 3 minutes, the opposite sidewalk begins fading behind white. Caleb walks back outside. The smell of exhaust has vanished beneath the clean, metallic bite of snow. Atlas presses close to his leg as the wind strengthens. Wade emerges from the store across the street, still holding his coffee, but he is no longer smiling. His truck is already dusted white. Caleb looks at him, then at the road climbing toward the mountain. Go home. Now. Wade glances toward the sky. You really think it's that bad? Caleb tightens the strap on his pack. I think in 2 hours nobody gets to choose. He turns uphill with Atlas. Behind them, the fire station siren suddenly begins to howl, and before Caleb reaches the first bend, Pine Hollow disappears inside the snow. The power dies while Caleb and Atlas are still climbing toward the cave. One moment, Pine Hollow glows faintly through the whiteout below. The next, every visible porch light and storefront disappears at once. The mountain becomes black, white, and wind. Caleb stops beneath a bent pine and looks back. A transformer flashes blue somewhere in the valley, followed several seconds later by a muffled crack. Then darkness swallows it. Atlas shakes snow from his muzzle and presses forward. Home, Caleb says. They climb the final quarter-mile by memory. Snow needles Caleb's cheeks. Ice gathers along Atlas's harness. By the time the insulated cave door closes behind them, Caleb's gloves are stiff and the thermometer reads 7 degrees outside. Inside, the stone chamber holds at 48. Caleb feeds cedar into the cast-iron stove. Flames catch with a dry snap, throwing amber light across stacked water containers, blankets, medical cases, and the 8 sleeping places he prepared yesterday. Atlas stands near the entrance instead of settling by the fire. Caleb switches on the weather radio. Static. Then a broken voice pushes through. Whiteout conditions. County Route 9 closed. Emergency crews unable. The signal dissolves. Caleb checks his handheld radio and calls the volunteer station. Nothing. He tries again. Only static answers. Below them, Pine Hollow has no electricity. No clear road out. No guarantee the utility crews can reach it before nightfall. Caleb removes his wet jacket and hangs it beside the stove. Water hisses from the sleeves onto warm iron. He could stay here. The cave has food, water, heat, and rock thick enough to ignore the screaming wind outside. Atlas finally turns from the door and looks directly at him. Then the shepherd's ears rise. Caleb hears nothing. Atlas does. He steps closer to the entrance, nose working along the lower seam, then scratches once at the wood. What is it? Caleb asks. Atlas gives a short bark. Caleb opens the door 6 inches. Wind punches snow across the floor. Beneath its roar comes something faint. Metal. A repeating horn. 3 short blasts. Silence. 3 more. Caleb closes the door and reaches for his outer shell. Atlas is already standing beneath his emergency harness hook. Of course you are. Caleb clips a 50-foot rescue line to his belt, packs blankets, hand warmers, a thermos, and a first aid kit, then fastens Atlas's reflective light. Outside, visibility has fallen below 30 feet. They descend slowly, Atlas taking the lead where the trail has vanished. 10 minutes later, the dog jerks left. Caleb follows and nearly walks into a pickup angled against a snowbank. A woman is inside with an elderly man, both wrapped in thin coats. The heater is dead. Caleb pulls open the passenger door. Can you walk? The woman stares at Atlas, then at Caleb. Where can we go? Caleb points uphill into the storm. My place. Recognition crosses her face. The cave. Another gust shakes the truck. Caleb offers his gloved hand. The cave has heat. She takes it. 20 brutal minutes later, the insulated door opens again. Warm cedar air rolls over them. The woman sees the stove, water, medical supplies, and prepared beds. Her mouth parts, but no words come. Caleb settles the older man beside the fire while Atlas lies near his boots. Then the radio crackles behind them. A strained voice finally breaks through the static. "Mercer, if you copy, we've got people stranded all over the North Slope." Caleb looks at the storm raging beyond the door. Atlas rises before he does. Atlas is through the door before Caleb finishes answering the radio. "Copy," Caleb says, tightening the rescue line around his waist. "Give me the nearest location." Static tears through the speaker. Miller Creek turnoff. Family of 3. Vehicle disabled. Caleb looks toward the woman beside the stove. She is wrapping another blanket around the elderly man, her fingers finally steady. "Keep that fire low and constant. One log at a time." She nods. Her eyes move toward the shelves, the water, the beds Caleb had prepared before anyone believed him. "You knew?" Caleb pulls on his frozen gloves. "I prepared." Then he follows Atlas into the white. The cold strikes like a solid wall. Wind drives powdered snow across the trail, so hard Caleb can hear it rasping against his hood. Atlas moves 10 feet ahead, reflective light flashing through the whiteout. The familiar descent is gone beneath waist-high drifts. Caleb plants each boot carefully, using the rescue rope around trees to mark their return path. At Miller Creek, Atlas suddenly stops. His head turns right. Caleb sees nothing. "Find." The shepherd lowers his nose and disappears into swirling snow. Caleb follows the glow on Atlas's harness until a dark shape materializes beside the road. A minivan buried nearly to its windows. Caleb knocks on the glass. A little girl inside lifts her face from her mother's coat. "Navy rescue?" the father asks when Caleb opens the door. Caleb shakes his head. "Just your neighbor." "Can everybody walk?" The father looks toward the mountain. "To where?" Atlas stands beside Caleb, snow crusting his whiskers. "Somewhere warm." The climb takes 40 minutes. Caleb ties the child's mittened hand to a short safety line and puts the mother behind Atlas, telling her to follow the shepherd's tracks exactly. The wind erases those tracks within seconds. Twice, Atlas stops and redirects them around hidden drop-offs. When the cave door finally opens, amber stove light spills across the snow. The little girl stares inside. "People live here?" Caleb unclips her line. "Tonight they do." By late afternoon, the cave holds 9 people. Caleb and Atlas have made 3 trips. Wet gloves steam beside the stove. The air smells of cedar, wool, canned chicken soup, and melting snow. Someone pours warm water into paper cups. Someone else gives up a dry pair of socks without being asked. The same cave pine hollow laugh that now carries the low sounds of breathing, whispered thanks, and children settling beneath blankets. Caleb kneels beside Atlas and checks his paws. The shepherd's pads are cold but intact. Caleb rubs them dry with a towel, then presses his forehead briefly against Atlas's. "You've done enough." Atlas looks toward the door. The radio crackles. "Mercer." Caleb reaches for it. "Here. We've lost contact with 4 people near County 9. 2 vehicles. Search crews can't reach them." Caleb glances at the fuel gauge beside the stove. Less than half the reserve remains. The woman he rescued first sees it too. "If you keep bringing people here, can this place hold them?" Caleb studies the sleeping pads, then the faces around the fire. "Yes." "Can the fuel?" He does not answer. Outside, the wind deepens into a roar. Atlas rises and walks to the door. Caleb slowly puts his gloves back on. The elderly man reaches out and catches his sleeve. "Son, you don't owe this town anything." Caleb looks down at the hand gripping him, then across the cave at people who had once laughed from warm storefronts. He gently frees his sleeve. "This isn't about what they owe me." He clips the line to Atlas's harness. "It's about who's still out there." The radio spits another burst of static. Then the volunteer chief's voice comes through with terrible clarity. "Mercer, temperatures dropping below 0. Anyone still outside has maybe hours." Caleb opens the door, and Atlas steps into the storm beside him. The cave has become warmer with every person Caleb brings inside, but the fuel gauge keeps moving the other way. He returns near sunset with 2 more stranded residents following the rope behind him. Snow cakes his eyebrows and turns Atlas's chest white. The insulated door slams shut against a gust, and for several seconds nobody speaks. Only the stove ticks, wet clothing drips on a stone, and 12 people breathe the same cedar-scented air. Caleb removes his gloves. His fingertips are pale. He flexes them beside the stove, then immediately kneels to inspect Atlas. Ice is packed between the shepherd's toes. Caleb melts it carefully with his palms. Stay with me, partner. Atlas licks his wrist once. Across the chamber, the little girl rescued from the minivan breaks a cracker in half and offers one piece to Atlas. He sniffs it, then looks toward Caleb. Go ahead. Atlas takes it gently. The child smiles. Her father looks away, rubbing both hands over his face. Caleb rises and checks the supplies. Food can stretch. Water is secure. Blankets can be shared. Heat is the problem. The stove's wood reserve has fallen to roughly 1/3, and the kerosene backup will not carry this many people comfortably through another full night. Caleb takes a grease pencil and writes 3 numbers on a storage lid. 12 people. 9 degrees Fahrenheit inside the entrance alcove. -6 degrees Fahrenheit outside. The woman from the first rescue watches him. How long? If everyone stays together and we close off the front section, longer. How much longer? Caleb studies the fuel. Long enough if the storm breaks. Nobody asks what happens if it does not. Caleb moves. He hangs emergency blankets across the chamber to reduce the heated space, shifts sleeping pads closer together, and assigns 2 adults to manage the stove under strict instructions. The cave changes within minutes. What had been his isolated home becomes something else, a shelter with rules, stations, responsibilities. Even the elderly man folds blankets. The same people who had once seen a caveman now follow Caleb's instructions without argument. Then the radio snaps alive. Mercer, copy? Caleb grabs it. Here. We have 4 still unaccounted for. Last known position somewhere north of County 9. Caleb looks at Atlas. The shepherd is already staring toward the door. Vehicles? Possibly 2. Names. Static swallows the answer. Caleb tries again. Repeat. The voice returns broken. Harlan, others unknown. Caleb's hand freezes around the radio. Wade Harlan. The man with the red jacket. The phone. The laughter. Behind Caleb, someone whispers, that's Wade. The cave falls quiet. Wind presses against the insulated door with a deep wooden groan. Caleb checks his watch, then the outside thermometer. The mercury has slipped another degree. The woman steps closer. You can't keep going out. Caleb pulls his gloves on. For people can't keep staying out. And if you don't come back? Caleb looks around the cave. He points to the water filter, then the stove controls, then the emergency radio. You already know what to do. Atlas rises slowly, stiffness showing for only 1 step before his working posture returns. Caleb sees it. He crouches and rests both hands against the shepherd's neck. You stay this time. Atlas holds his gaze. Caleb reaches for the door. The German shepherd steps between him and it. Atlas. The dog does not move. Then his ears lift toward the storm, and a low sound gathers in his chest. Not fear. Direction. Caleb closes his eyes for 1 second, clips the rescue line between them, and opens the door. All right. 1 more. Outside, darkness has erased the mountain. The deadline is no longer the storm ending. It is whether Caleb and Atlas can reach 4 missing people before the cold does. The rescue line disappears behind Caleb in seconds, swallowed by white darkness as Atlas pulls north through waist-deep drifts. The wind has sharpened, driving crystals against Caleb's goggles with a dry hiss, while somewhere beneath the storm the frozen pines crack like distant rifle shots. He keeps one gloved hand on the rope and the other near Atlas's harness. Find them. Atlas lowers his muzzle. Snow erases every human track, but not everything underneath it. He moves 20 yards, stops, circles, then drives hard toward a stand of spruce. Caleb follows without hesitation. They crest a buried roadside ditch, and Atlas suddenly barks. Once, twice. Caleb drops beside him and brushes snow from a dark shape protruding through the drift. A side mirror. Vehicle. He digs with both hands until his shovel comes free, then clears the driver's door while Atlas paws at the rear quarter panel. Metal groans beneath packed snow. Caleb forces the door open 6 inches. Anybody hear me? A weak voice answers. Here. Caleb wedges his shoulder against the frame. The door gives. Inside, the air smells of cold vinyl, stale coffee, and gasoline. Wade Harlan sits behind the wheel, his red jacket zipped to his chin. Beside him is an older woman wrapped in a floor mat, and 2 teenagers huddle beneath a wool coat in the back. 4. All alive. Wade stares through Caleb as if the storm has stripped every joke from his mouth. You came. Caleb removes a chemical heat pack and presses it into the older woman's hands. Can everyone walk? One teenager nods. Wade tries to stand, but his leg buckles against the doorframe. Caleb catches him under the arm. Easy. Leave me. Take them. Caleb tightens the rescue strap around Wade's waist. Nobody gets left. Atlas stands facing south, snow gathering along his back. Caleb clips the 4 survivors onto the guide rope, places Wade directly behind him, and gives the others simple instructions. One hand on the line. Follow Atlas. If the person ahead stops, you stop. The return becomes slower. Much slower. Wind fills their footprints almost as quickly as they make them. Halfway down the slope, a violent gust knocks one teenager sideways. Caleb anchors his boots, catches the line, and Atlas drops his weight against the harness until everyone regains footing. Move, Caleb calls. The cave lies less than half a mile away, but the mountain has turned that distance into an argument measured one step at a time. Atlas suddenly stops. His ears flatten. Caleb sees why. The familiar route ahead has vanished beneath a fresh collapse of snow and broken branches. The direct path is gone. Wade's teeth chatter behind him. Now what? Caleb studies the slope, then looks at Atlas. Home. The shepherd turns immediately toward the rock face, choosing a narrower traverse Caleb has never used with civilians. Caleb could override him. He does not. Follow the dog. Atlas leads them along the mountain's shoulder until a faint amber point appears through the snow. Lantern light. The cave. When the insulated door opens, warm air carrying cedar smoke and soup rolls across their frozen faces. Hands reach out. Blankets unfold. The teenagers disappear into waiting arms. Caleb unclips Wade last. Wade looks around at the stone walls he once mocked, at neighbors alive because those walls are holding back the blizzard, then kneels beside Atlas. His fingers hover before touching the shepherd's damp neck. I laughed at both of you. Caleb says nothing. The stove pops softly. Wade swallows. If we get through tonight, I'll tell everyone exactly who saved us. Caleb looks at the crowded cave, then at Atlas standing beneath the lantern glow. Don't tell them, he says quietly. Remember it. Outside, the blizzard strikes the mountain again, but inside the cave, the man and dog the town had laughed at are now the reason the town still has people to bring home. The cave door slams inward hard enough to make the lantern flame jump, and Atlas is already on his feet before Caleb hears the words. There are more out there. Wade stands in the entrance, snow crusted across his shoulders, pointing into a wall of white. Behind him, the wind screams over the rocks, carrying the sharp smell of pine and frozen earth into the warm cave. Miller family, he says. Their place is 3 miles down the county road. 2 kids. Maybe their grandmother. Caleb looks at Atlas. The shepherd's chest rises fast from the last rescue, melting snow darkening the fur beneath his harness. Caleb kneels and runs 2 fingers beneath the strap, checking for rubbing. Atlas touches his cold nose to Caleb's wrist. Ready. Someone near the stove says, you can't go back into that. Caleb pulls on his iced gloves. Then they can't come back without us. 10 minutes later, he and Atlas disappear into the storm again. The temperature has fallen below 0, and every breath catches like needles in Caleb's throat. His headlamp illuminates only a spinning tunnel of snow. Atlas stays several feet ahead, body low, choosing ground by scent and instinct where Caleb can barely distinguish road from ditch. Then the shepherd stops, not uncertain, listening. Caleb kills the crunch of his own boots. Through the wind comes a faint metallic banging. 3 strikes. Silence. 3 more. Atlas bolts left. Atlas. Caleb follows him down a steep embankment where snow reaches his thighs. At the bottom, the dog begins digging beside a buried pickup. Caleb clears the passenger window and finds a woman inside with a boy pressed beneath her coat and an elderly woman curled against the back seat. The driver's side is pinned against a snowbank. Caleb smashes no glass. Instead, he digs until the passenger door can move, wedges it open, and reaches inside. We're going somewhere warm. The woman stares past him at Atlas. That dog found us. Caleb clips a rescue tether around her waist. He found everybody tonight. The return is brutal. The grandmother cannot manage the incline, so Caleb secures her in the compact rescue sled he carries folded against his pack. Atlas takes the forward line, while Caleb controls the rear. Their combined weight moves her foot by foot uphill. Snow rattles against the sled's plastic shell. Caleb's shoulders burn. Atlas slips once, catches himself, then pulls again without being told. Near the ridge, the boy stumbles. Atlas immediately turns back and stands against him until Caleb reaches them. "Stay beside him," Caleb says. He knows the way. The boy grips the shepherd's harness. Atlas leads. When the cave finally appears, its amber lantern light glows through the storm like something impossible. People rush forward. Wade takes the grandmother's sled. Others wrap the children in blankets and move them toward the stove. Nobody laughs now. Nobody looks at the stone walls as a symbol of failure. They touch them as shelter. Caleb closes the door and removes Atlas's harness. The shepherd's legs tremble beneath him. Caleb lowers himself onto the rough floor and cups Atlas's face between both hands. "That's enough, partner." Then someone checks the handwritten list of households pinned beside the radio. A finger stops on one name. Silence spreads through the cave until even the stove seems too loud. One family is still missing. Caleb looks toward the door. Atlas, exhausted moments earlier, slowly rises beside him. Caleb fastens the harness one final time. "We finish this together." Caleb and Atlas step into the white darkness for the last time, leaving the cave's amber glow behind them. The wind has changed direction, harder now, driving ice against Caleb's goggles with a dry clicking sound. His thermometer reads 12 below. Atlas moves slowly, paws sinking through the crust, but his nose stays lifted. The missing family lives less than 2 miles away. Tonight, 2 miles might as well be 20. Caleb follows the shepherd between snow-loaded pines until Atlas suddenly leaves the road and climbs toward a narrow ridge. "Easy, partner." Atlas keeps pulling. Then Caleb hears it beneath the wind, a dog barking. Not Atlas. Farther down the slope, a porch light flickers weakly through blowing snow. The house is nearly buried to its windows. Caleb pounds on the door. "Search and rescue." "Anybody inside?" A man answers, holding a battery lantern. Behind him, his wife sits wrapped around their little girl beneath 3 blankets. Their wood stove is cold. The chimney has been blocked by drifting snow, and the indoor temperature has fallen below freezing. The man looks at Atlas, then at Caleb. Caleb recognizes him. Months earlier, this same man had stood outside the general store laughing loud enough for half the town to hear when someone called Caleb the Seal, who traded a house for a hole in a mountain. Now neither man mentions it. "Can she walk?" Caleb asks. The father shakes his head. Caleb kneels beside the child and opens his insulated outer jacket around her blankets. "Then I carry her." He secures her against his chest while Atlas takes point. The parents follow a tether line Caleb clips between them. Outside, visibility collapses to less than 20 feet. Snow erases their tracks almost immediately. Atlas stops twice, testing the air, then changes direction around a drift taller than Caleb's shoulders. The shepherd is no longer simply finding a path. He is bringing them home. Nearly an hour later, warm light appears between the rocks. Voices rise from the cave entrance. Hands reach out. Wade takes the mother. Someone pulls the father inside. Caleb carries the girl to the stove, where her small fingers slowly uncurl beneath the orange glow. Atlas lies down beside her blanket. She reaches toward him and rests one mitten against his ear. Dawn comes quietly. The blizzard weakens into fine snow, and pale sunlight spills across the cave walls, revealing rows of sleeping neighbors, empty coffee cups, wet gloves, rescue blankets, and boots lined beside Caleb's own. The place they mocked has kept them alive. When the county crews finally reach the ridge, nobody rushes away. The man Caleb rescued walks over carrying a thermos. He looks at the stone ceiling, then at Atlas sleeping beside Caleb. "I owe you an apology." Caleb takes the thermos. "Help somebody next time." The man nods once. And he does. In the weeks afterward, neighbors return with lumber, propane, food, and tools. Not because Caleb asks, but because they remember the night his door stayed open. Spring eventually softens the mountain. Grass pushes through the last gray patches of snow. One evening, Caleb sits outside the cave while Atlas rests against his boot, silver beginning to show around the shepherd's muzzle. Below them, the town windows glow one by one in the valley. Caleb scratches behind Atlas's ear. "Funny thing, buddy. They thought we were the ones without a home." Atlas lifts his head toward the distant lights, then settles closer. Caleb looks back at the rough stone doorway that sheltered strangers when the whole mountain turned against them. And for the first time, nobody in the valley sees a cave anymore. They see the place where a Navy SEAL and his dog taught an entire town what shelter truly means.